Hey y'all, this evening we're going to be working on a TW200, the 2024 model. So we hit the 600-mile mark. Actually, I zipped well past that, went to 725 and said, oh damn, I need to do the initial valve adjustment. So I did that this weekend, got the valves adjusted. They were kind of towards the end of the spec on the loose end. I think the exhaust was at 6 thousandths of an inch and the intake was at 4 thousandths. So anyway, I adjusted them. I got them down to the tighter end of the tolerance. I got the exhaust down to 4 thousandths, and I got the intake down to 2. Did it with the bike was super cold, hadn't ran in 3 or 4 days. Did all that, cranked it up, and to my surprise, hell, it makes more racket now than it did before the valve adjustment. Which, according to the TW forums, that's just the nature of the beast on this bike. So anyway, we're gonna do a quick video tonight, or a fairly quick video. I'm gonna walk you through a valve adjustment on the TW200. We're gonna double check my valve lash, make sure everything is straight and narrow, and we'll get started. So anyway, my name's Cody. This is Texas Patriot Off-Road and Outdoors. So stay tuned. All right, y'all don't mind the KRX here. It is looking a bit deplorable. Anyway, we've had other projects to worry about other than washing this thing. So anyway, here's the tools you're going to need to do the valve job on your TW200. So preferably a 3/8 ratchet. You need a 10 millimeter socket, 17 millimeter socket, maybe a couple different extensions. You're going to need some ply rods right there, a 10 millimeter open end box end wrench, a 5 millimeter Allen, big old handy Phillips screwdriver. You're also going to need this custom fabricated wrench right here. It's a 5/32, been modified. You'll see what that's for here in a little while. And of course, the star of the show, set of feeler gauges. All right, first thing we're going to do, we've got 2 bolts under this seat. Under there, we're going to take the 2 10 millimeter bolts out, and this end of the seat has a suction cup, so we're going to remove the seat real quick. And so you have 2 of those, one there, one on that side. We're going to get these loose and taken off, and we'll go from there. All right, both bolts removed. We can head up to the top of the bike. Give it a little tug, lift that up, pull back, suction cup, seat comes off. You got 1 bolt holding the tank on. Plus you're going to have, on this side, you need to disconnect your fuel supply line to the carburetor, which is right here. 10 millimeter on this as well. Pull this hose off the inlet on the carb. Put the camera down for a second. And put your petcock. Turn your fuel off, as I forgot to do. So, all right, now that we have the fuel line and the bolt removed, we're going to pop the plastics loose on each side. Do a little popperating here. Try not to break them. Now that everything's loose from the tank, we should be able to pull up and lift out. Kind of up and back. There that sucker is. Now that we have the top of the engine exposed, we're going to go ahead and take off your 2 valve covers, your intake side and your exhaust side, and that's going to have use your 5 millimeter Allen that I showed you earlier. All right, looking at the motor, front's to your right. You can see there's your exhaust pipe. That's your exhaust valve cover. Over here you have your carburetor. Intake valve cover. We're going to access both of these primarily from the left side of the bike. All right, have all 3 of them loose with the Allen and kind of do the rest by hand. The other thing to note, hadn't rode the bike, but the one time, since adjusting the valves, make sure all this area is clean around all your valve covers. And on your lower ports here, your 2 plugs on your motor, will be opening these up in a little bit too. So just make sure those areas are clean. Blow it off with some compressed air. and come back and wipe it with a paper towel. Right. The exhaust side. Work on the intake now. One thing I'll note on the intake valve cover, we're going to go around to the right side of the bike, and you do not have to remove or loosen your throttle cable. It's going to look like you do, but you don't. Going to be a little bit of a tight fit up in here, but just kind of nudge it out the way. Make sure you get your Allen seated well. Get that sucker. There you go. I'd already loosened those up. They don't take a lot of pressure to loosen, and you don't need to do a whole lot to tighten them up because they are plastic. They both also have O-rings. You can see them. So make sure when you reinstall those that the O-rings are there. So I don't know if you can see in there. There's the nut you're going to be rotating, and through the peep sight, if it'll focus, you're going to be looking for a couple marks that we're going to find here in a minute. But to do that, we need to watch this intake rocker arm and valve train assembly. So I said rise and fall earlier. Technically, you're going to be looking for the rocker arm, which is right here. You're going to be looking at that to be depress this spring downward, okay? And then on the compression stroke, the rocker arm is going to begin closing. And when it just closes, we need to get back down here. We need to start watching as I rotate. I'm going to look through that peephole for our mark. All right, another thing I forgot to mention, we need to rotate the motor counterclockwise. That is the direction it turns. All right, we are now moving the intake valve. It's compressing the valve and or the spring, lowering the intake valve. We're going to slowly rotate it. It's going to come back up. All right, now that the valve is back up, we're going to get down there and look in the peep hole. All right, there's our first mark. You can see it's got the verticals on the left and right with the horizontal line. We're going to go right past that. There it is. That's where we're going to start adjusting the valves. All right, after you have that after you got that motator, you need to make sure you have play in both of these valves. All right, so that kind of tells you you're at top dead center where you're supposed to be. So on the intake side, the spec is 2 to 4 thousandths. So we're going to come on down here. We're looking at the top numbers here. We're going to try the 25. That's 2.5 thousandths right there. And what you're trying to do is you're going to go right between, I don't know if y'all can see that, right between the top of the valve stem. Let me readjust. Right between the top of the valve stem where that feeler gauge is going and underneath the rocker arm. So I kind of put my finger under here, try to raise it up and slide that sucker in. Okay, that goes. So it's got that much clearance. And I believe I set it at the 2.5 thousandths. So let's get these suckers out. Let's go to the 3. See what happens. Okay, we're at 3. And always make sure you only have one feeler gauge because it's easy to stick. I have to work the angles a little bit different. Okay, I can get it started, but I cannot get the 3 in. So that means the intake has about 2.5 thousandths or so clearance. Again, specs between 2 and 4, so that's kind of where I want it, a little bit on the tighter side. Remember, as time goes on, these things may wear a little bit. They could loosen, or they could wear the other way. So that's why it's proper to check them. So over on the exhaust side, you're going to have a little bit more clearance on the spec between 4 and 6. And the reason we're like that is because heat expands, right? So that side gets a little hotter, so it's going to need a little bit more clearance. So I'm going to pause this. We're going to go around to the other side. All right. Okay, 4 went right in there. So on TDub's kid, I should have listened to him. He recommends taping the gauges you need to use, or taping the ones you don't need, kind of in the tool like that. So good little tip. That guy's got a lot of content on the TW200. All right, so the 5 will start like the 3 on the other side. It starts, and again, I'm lifting up, and it will not go. So we are within spec on both the intake and exhaust valve. So earlier, all right, we're in spec, so we're good to go. So earlier I was telling you I had that other modified wrench. I don't know if you can see that, but it just takes a little small square specialized tool, or you can use an open end wrench if you have the right size. You would loosen this 10 millimeter nut, and then you would adjust the centerpiece downward to close the gap, or loosen it to open the gap, and then you would hold that while you tighten the nut back down. So we don't need any valve adjustment there, so we're going to stop now. There's other videos on going further, but anyway, that's that. All right, y'all, that wraps it up on the TW200 valve check. It's not really an adjustment video because we didn't have to do that. I did do the valve adjustments on Saturday. Kind of wish I would have filmed that. I was in a rush though. So I did find that at 725 miles, the bike was at the far end of the spec. The exhaust was at 6 and intake was at 4. So when I got done, I brought the exhaust to 4 thousandths and intake down to 2. And ran the bike for a little bit Saturday. Seemed like it was a little noisier than it was before the adjustment, which I found odd with the tighter valves. And anyway, got on the TW200 forum, which I belong to, and of course you can read all kind of stuff about this bike, how noisy it is. It is reliable, but it is old school single cylinder mechanical valve train, so they are a little bit noisier than a more modern motorcycle engine or car engine. But anyway, I'll do another valve check clearance at the next interval, which I believe is at 3,000 miles. So if I find that they need adjustment, I will do a video on that most likely. So anyway, thanks for watching Texas Patriot Off-Road and Outdoors.